From Seth Rollins to Vince McMahon, Tony Khan to Drew McIntyre, it's no secret that CM Punk has a long list of enemies. If you become one of his enemies, Punk will embarrass you, troll you, and make your life much harder than it is. Today, we are going to look at the stories of people who found their way onto CM Punk's bad side. Starting with Drew McIntyre, who stormed out of the arena at Survivor Series 2023 when CM Punk returned to WWE. Most wrestling fans will remember 2024 for the CM Punk versus Drew feud. Punk's highly anticipated 2023 WWE return at Survivor Series, while celebrated, sparked a rivalry with McIntyre. Their feud intensified at the 2024 Royal Rumble, where Punk, a favorite to win, suffered a torn triceps after taking McIntyre's double-armed Future Shock DDT. This would directly lead to Punk eventually being eliminated by Cody Rhodes from the Rumble. McIntyre capitalized on Punk's injury, earning a WWE Heavyweight Championship match against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 40. He won the title, but his victory was short-lived. Punk, now a commentator, retaliated by attacking McIntyre, allowing Damian Priest to cash in his Money in the Bank contract and steal the championship. This led to a heated personal feud between Punk and McIntyre. Drew publicly mocked Punk, which created a lot of funny viral moments.
Man, I just realized I'm wearing this shirt. What bad manners. You know, on the back it says #1 in the checklist, injure CM
Drew
Punk.
McIntyre, I ain't never had to put another man's name on a t-shirt to sell it.
Drew proved that he is one of the few superstars that can keep up with CM Punk on the microphone. Their rivalry culminated in a brutal, critically acclaimed Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood, where Punk ultimately defeated McIntyre after a grueling 30-minute-plus contest.
How would you describe what it's like working for Tony?
He's not a boss. He's a nice guy. And I think ultimately that is a detriment to the company. But it's not my company.
Putting an entire company on the list of CM Punk's victims might seem like a stretch, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The Young Bucks, Hangman Adam Page, Eddie Kingston, Tony Khan, Chris Jericho, Jungle Boy Jack Perry. These are just some of the people who don't get along with Punk. Some, but not all. So it makes sense for me to just put the whole company on the list. He was a rogue element, a volatile chemical that required its own isolated container. Tony had to create an entirely new show, Collision, to keep Punk away from half the locker room. His tenure in AEW was marked by multiple backstage altercations, culminating in a particularly explosive brawl that ultimately led to Tony Khan terminating his contract. However, Punk's departure left a gaping hole. AEW, it seemed, struggled to navigate the fallout. Public relations missteps and a perceived lack of decisive leadership painted a picture of a company in disarray. The perception that AEW was run by its wrestlers, rather than its management, grew, and Tony Khan's image was tarnished, with many questioning his competence as a leader. The creation of Collision, intended to separate Punk from a large portion of the locker room, became a stark illustration of the internal strife, and ultimately did not solve the deep-rooted issues. Adding fuel to the fire, Punk, upon leaving AEW, embarked on a series of interviews and public statements, shedding light on his tumultuous time with the company. His words, often laced with criticism and accusations, further solidified the negative image many held of All Elite Wrestling. It was as if he took a magnifying glass to their flaws, broadcasting them to the world. In many ways, AEW, with its damaged reputation and lingering internal strife, stands as perhaps Punk's biggest victim. The company's credibility suffered a significant blow, and the fallout from his presence continues to cast a long shadow. CM Punk's relationship with the Shield members, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Dean Ambrose, Jon Moxley, is very complex. Originally, Punk reportedly pitched the idea for the Shield, initially envisioning Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Chris Hero. However, WWE ultimately chose Roman Reigns instead of Chris Hero, a decision that Punk reportedly wasn't happy with. You would think this initial disagreement might have isolated Roman, leaving Punk on good terms with the others. You would be wrong. Punk doesn't get along with any of them. To this day, Punk has beef with all members of the Shield. Most wrestling fans believe it might be because Punk likes to claim credit for their creation, and the Shield members disagree. Seth Rollins, in particular, has been vocal about his disdain for Punk. He has repeatedly called him a cancer and exhibited a noticeable meltdown when Punk returned to WWE at Survivor Series 2023. Seth Rollins is unique in openly explaining his deep dislike for Punk. He attributes it to Punk's sudden 2014 departure, claiming Punk cut off contact with former colleagues and unfairly blamed them for his own issues with WWE. This bitterness has led to their current, highly charged rivalry. Who do you think will win the match between Seth, Roman, and Punk? Let me know in the comments down below. This one is relatively straightforward. Punk went on Colt Cabana's podcast post-WWE and basically just said Ryback was unsafe and said a bunch of other things about him. He blames Ryback for giving him broken ribs and other injuries that CM Punk discussed in the interview. This is a very serious accusation in the world of professional wrestling, where the risk of injury is already high. Imagine a construction site where one worker consistently disregards safety protocols, putting everyone else at risk. This creates a hostile and distrustful environment. From there, the two have been taking shots at each other ever since. Ryback even utilized his ring entrance on the Payback kickoff show to send some serious shade in Punk's direction. There have also been reports and accusations concerning clashes of ego and professional perception. The dynamic between CM Punk and Ryback has been marked by a persistent and often one-sided exchange, where Ryback's actions have frequently been perceived as attempts to garner Punk's attention. Ryback has engaged in numerous attempts to defend himself and counter Punk's accusations. These responses have taken various forms, including social media posts and interviews. Often, these responses have been seen as reactive, and therefore as Ryback trying to get a reaction from Punk. Punk has at times seemed to largely ignore Ryback's responses, so Ryback's continued attempts to engage have been interpreted by some as a form of chasing attention. It has been observed that Ryback will often comment on anything that involves CM Punk, even when not directly involved. It's like a person who constantly tries to insert themselves into a conversation where they're not wanted, hoping to get a reaction from someone who's clearly trying to distance themselves. In essence, while Punk's criticisms were sharp and direct, Ryback's responses have often been seen as attempts to keep the feud alive, leading to the perception that he's constantly trying to get Punk's attention. He is perhaps Punk's most obsessed victim. Let me know if you liked this video so I can make a part 2. Follow me on Instagram, the link is in the description, and click the video on screen now for more Curiosity Thread wrestling content.